The Israel-Palestine conflict is known as one of the world's most complicated and intractable political struggles. Negotiations between the two sides have continuously broken down over the years. But, as Israel's occupation of Palestine enters its 7th decade, is the situation really so difficult to understand? Join us over the next 2 videos as we explain the conflict's origins and potential solutions. A bizarre press conference between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump took place, in which the latter appeared to signal a shift in decades-old US policy on the Israel-Palestine conflict.
I'm looking at 2-state and 1-state, and I like the one that both parties like.
But before we take a look at the potential solutions to the conflict, it's important to understand the history of the State of Israel. Israel was founded as a state in historic Palestine in 1948, which was then under British occupation, under the British Mandate of Palestine. The United Nations approved the creation of the State of Israel following its 1947 partition plan for Palestine and by passing Resolution 181. The resolution outlined independent Arab and Jewish states alongside each other following the withdrawal of British forces, dividing Palestine into 8 parts. 3 of those areas were allocated for the future Arab-Palestinian state and 3 to a future Jewish state. The 7th was set aside for the town of Jaffa, which was intended to become an Arab enclave within Jewish territory. And the 8th part, Jerusalem, would be kept neutral and administered by the United Nations Trusteeship Council. Unsurprisingly, this convoluted plan did not work, and its adoption by the United Nations triggered a civil war between Jewish and Arab communities and the British mandatory forces. Israel then unilaterally declared itself an independent state, without formally declaring its borders, on May 14, 1948. Infuriated by this decision, a coalition of Arab states declared war with Israel, and the first Arab-Israeli war broke out the following day. Israel defeated the Arab states, and in the end, Israel had retained all of the areas Resolution 181 had set aside for the Jewish state, and had occupied 60% of the land intended for the Palestinian state. The conflict resulted in the forced displacement of 700,000 Palestinian refugees, most of whom would never return home. Palestinians call this forced displacement the Nakba, or the catastrophe. The UN General Assembly adopted Resolution 194 in response to the Nakba, which held that refugees wishing to return would be permitted to do so, and compensation would be paid for property of those who chose not to return. To this date, a Palestinian state has yet to be formally recognized, and the refugees of 1948 have had no settlement. Following the end of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, an armistice agreement between the Arab states and the State of Israel was reached. This armistice created a set of borders within historic Palestine that would become the internationally recognized borders of a future Palestinian state.